Okay, in this example, we've got a list of names. Now, these names have one issue with them, and that is they're separated, the first name and surname, each by an asterisk. Now, what we were mentioning earlier on in worked example 3 about data cleansing, well, again, another common way that you can use Excel functions to cleanse data is to basically substitute one character or a sequence of characters with another sequence. Now, a popular one is often how can you separate two words but still in the same cell. So in this case, we've got Bruce asterisk Kent. So we're going to ask the question, how can we remove the asterisk and replace it with a space? So basically the effect we want is this, Bruce Kent, with a space. So it actually reads like a normal name. Well, in Excel, we've got a function called substitute. Now this is a really handy function, and it basically searches text for a phrase or sequence and replaces that with a user-defined choice. So in other words, we can ask Excel to search each bit of data for a specific sequence. In this case, it would just be the asterisk, and replace it with a user-defined choice, which for us would be a space. Now the substitute function takes 3 mandatory parameters and 1 optional. The first parameter is the text that you're going to search. The second parameter is the sequence that you're asking Excel to search within that text. The third parameter is if you get a match of that sequence for this one, for this second parameter, then replace it with your new text, which in our case would be a space. Now the fourth parameter is an interesting one, and that's basically optional, and that basically is called instance. Now what that means is if you've got, for example, a sequence which occurs more than once within your text, you can tell Excel to only replace a sequence that you specify going forward. So for example, if you had 3 instances, you could tell Excel using this parameter here to start from the second and third instances and replace those. So you would leave the first instance completely alone. Now this is optional, so if you do leave it blank, then Excel will just replace all instances of your old text that you're searching for with your new text. And more often than not, folks, I find that if you do replace something, you really kind of want to replace everything when you're using this type of data cleansing. However, like with all things in Excel, it does vary depending on your actual data. Now, another thing, folks, is that the substitute function is case sensitive. So a lowercase, say, capital B would be treated differently to an uppercase capital B. And also, the substitute function does not support wildcards. So you can't, for example, search for a partial phrase or sequence. It has to be exact. Now, this function is very useful for cleaning up data and removing unwanted characters. So let's write our function. Right, so I'm going to press equals and then type in substitute. Okay, our first parameter is text. So we want to search this entry first. Now our old text that we're searching for, in other words, the text that we want to be replaced, is our asterisk. And you wrap this around double quotes. Okay. Now our new text is going to be a space. So again, we've covered something similar already in our earlier examples, but what we basically want to do is put a double quote, space, and another double quote. And that is our new text. Now we want all instances of the asterisk to be replaced. Now we can tell from this limited data set that there's only one instance, but just imagine if you had a lot of entries of rows, then you pretty much would have to confirm if there is only one instance of the asterisk. Now, we're going to leave the fourth parameter blank because we want to replace all instances within the text of the asterisk with a space. Now, in this case, we actually can see from the limited data that we've got that there's only, in each name, one instance of an asterisk occurring. Again, it depends on your data set, and it's down to you as the user to decide whether you want all instances of your search text to be replaced. So we're going to close that. We're going to press enter. There. You see that? The asterisk has been removed and has been replaced with a space. So now our name reads a bit more proper, and we can easily distinguish our first name and surname. Now, one more thing we're going to do here, folks, is actually just drag the formula down and update these cells as well. And then we're just going to look into each formula, because I just want to show you how Excel's autofill function works when it comes to formulas, when you actually drag them down, because in essence, that's the beauty of Excel. When you put a formula in one cell, you can then drag it down for the rest of the cells and it will update accordingly. So I'm going to drag it down there. And as you can see, it's replaced the asterisk with a space. So I'm just going to look at our original formula. Now, the bit that changes when you drag it down is basically this bit here. Our old text parameter is fixed, as is our new text. Now, this reference here is a relative reference. So when you do drag it down, you can see here it updates to C85 and C86 and C87. Now, this is because the reference is relative. So there's no dollar symbol fixing it to make it absolute. Now, that's an important thing when you actually do these sorts of formulas, is to make sure that if you are going to update your lists of data, that the references are relative. Now, there are instances where you may want to fix the column or fix the row or fix both, but again, that depends on your actual function that you're using. In this instance, we wanted to replace all the asterisks, so we made sure that this cell here is relative. Okay, so that concludes this worked example. If there are any questions or queries, please feel free to reach out.